Hello, today I was a little bored and I looked in my freezer and this is what today came up with. Phyllo pastry. So I overnight let it defrost, and it's one of my favorite things to work with because on its own it doesn't really have a lot of calories. It's almost like the tofu of the pastry world. But once you add all the flavors of baklava, it becomes something amazing. It's actually not that hard to make. I especially don't use the nuts, so I like it more of the Greek way than the, say, Lebanese way. The first thing it's gonna call for is, I'm using one of my favorite cookbooks. There's a series called The Essential. Years ago, a friend gave me the vegetarian one of this series, and there were quite a few of them. I have Mediterranean appetizers, I think I have an Asian fusion one. They're simple, they have beautiful pictures. I did get out most of my ingredients in advance so that it wouldn't be a lot of work. And this particular baklava, the biggest pain will be when we do the layers of pastry with melted butter. So it is gonna call for, I gotta get a saucepan. We're doing the reduction of the sugar and the liquid. So I'm starting with the saucepan. This time it's asking me to put sugar, lemon rind, and 1.5 cups of water in. So in this case, it calls for caster sugar. I'm just using a fine organic sugar that I get from Costco. 2¼ cups. So let's put that in there now. Actually, I can turn this off before I put it on. I don't want to burn the sugar. There's 1, 2, and I'm just going to eyeball 1/4 cup because I would rather have too much sugar than not enough. And the next thing it's asking for is 1.5 cups of water. You're basically making a melted sauce. And for years, I thought this sauce was mainly honey. It's actually sugar, and one of the secret ingredients, which I didn't even realize I had, was orange blossom water. So this is calling for 1/4 cup of honey. I happen to have this amazing honey I got as a gift from a student, one of my South Lake Hospital students, and it's from Georgina Island, the local Aboriginal band. They are, A Prairie is in Georgina, First Nation Islands, and what I love about it is raw, it's local, and now I have to find my 1/4 cup. So because this honey is probably gonna stick, I could pre-take some of my melted butter and kind of grease the cup I'm putting it in. I will get my little spatula, which I love. I'm gonna put the honey in. It's a little loud. And this is nice and free flowing because it's been in the cupboard, but as the winter went on, the longer you leave honey, the more likely it is to crystallize, and you kind of want to use it up. So I'm going to scrape this out. If ever you do have honey that hardens, which does happen in the winter, I do microwave it, or I put the jar in a bowl of hot or boiling water. Keep the jar closed. And then it's calling for 1/4 cup of lemon juice. I've actually done this often with orange or other different tropical juices instead. Today I wanted to take the orange rind, orange zest, and one of my favorite things to use ever is this rasp. I use it for absolutely everything. I'm just gonna grate some orange zest here on my cutting board. It has a lot of oils that come out of the orange, so it gives it more flavor than just using a regular zester you might use for making mixed drinks. I can smell the beautiful, I'm using a Clementine Moroccan right now. And then I am actually probably gonna cheat a bit because this isn't really juicing much. I'm gonna cut this in half, and I'm gonna use one of my juicers because it's calling for 1/4 cup of lemon juice. I'm doing it completely with orange. I'm gonna juice this bit. It's not very much. And I'll do the other half. Look at how gorgeous this color is right now. This time of year is beautiful. There's so many kinds of citrus available. I am going to get one of my juices out of the fridge. This time I just happen to have pineapple juice already ready. So to add more, this is something I pick up at Costco. You get 6 for just under $7. So it's an amazing deal. I go through a lot of pineapple juice. It's my emergency cocktail if friends come over. It also makes a really good salad dressing when I use cider vinegar and this juice instead of lemon juice. I'm gonna mix that up. I like to use a wooden spoon. Actually, maybe I'll use a whisk this time to make sure it's properly incorporated. Not a very pretty color because I'm using the unbleached sugar. So that is melting. Then it's asking me for 2 tablespoons of orange blossom water. So someone gave me this bottle and you don't really use much. I also have the rose water. Today this recipe calls for orange blossom water. I think I could use, wow, that is very fragrant. It actually totally smells like blossoms, not oranges. 1, 2. I've never used this. Normally I just use more fruit juice. So we'll see what it tastes like. It's also asking for, so I'm gonna mix all of this and stir over high heat until it's dissolved and boil it for 5 minutes. And that's gonna reduce down from it being the original amount of water, quite a bit come down. It is asking for lots of nuts, so I will not be using these pistachios and almonds, but I can make the sugar portion of it. I'll get my honey out of the way. It calls for more sugar. It originally only says 2 tablespoons of castor sugar and 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. Because I'm not using the nuts, I actually more than 4 times double this usually. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a quarter. I'm gonna do a half a cup. I'd rather have too much and not need it. And then for my cinnamon, I'm gonna eyeball it just because I love cinnamon. So you mix those 2 things together. Now they're using equal amounts. I'm using more sugar than cinnamon. Maybe I'll use this. So I want to make sure that it's equally mixed up because you don't want to bite into a thing of just cinnamon. So I use the whisk quite a bit. It's funny, sometimes growing up we never had a whisk. We used a fork for everything. Wow, this smells amazing. It's that cinnamon. Before that, it was the smell of the oranges. Cooking, especially when you're baking, you want it to be a beautiful experience. Right now, I'm also looking outside. It's gorgeous. It doesn't have to be a drudgery, this awful thing that you kind of dread. And I've also pre-melted 6.5 ounces of butter. I'm using quite a bit more than that. I have about a cup. I like to make double anytime I'm going to make something. So I'm gonna shift my book out of the way, all my ingredients out of the way. Like my mom taught me, clean as you go. Let's shift all this out of the way. And what's going to be messy at some point, oh, I gotta get stirring this because I wanna make sure that it's boiling. When you boil sugar, I'm not gonna use a candy thermometer, but it can be very, excuse this awful dress. I wore it because it's springy, but it's clinging to everything. I just want it to be a happy pattern. It's not the most flattering cut, but it says spring to me. So, oh my gosh, that smells amazing. I'm gonna keep stirring that. I might even cheat and put a little bit more honey in there. Just because I love the taste of honey and the health benefits. Of course, because I have it at a high temperature, it's not gonna have the raw honey benefits. So it will come to a boil in a moment. It's gonna boil for 5 minutes and then I get to do all the layers. What I will do is pre-glaze or pre-grease these containers. I have 2 different glass ones because I want to double it. I always put 1 for now and 1 for in the freezer. And that's what I use when emergency company comes over, which I guess won't be happening for a while. And then I can use these treats that I have in the freezer already ready, just defrost them. And let's do this. So I've been doing this a lot lately. Instead of using a spray can of greasing, I microwave some butter or I use some grapeseed oil. And I take a silicone pastry brush and I'm just gently kind of going through all the edges. It's a lot easier and it guarantees you've generously buttered the pan. What happens when you're working with things with a lot of sugar, if you don't have enough fat on the bottom of the container, when the sugar caramelizes in the oven, especially I'm noticing in a gas oven, this happens much more frequently, it's hard to get whatever it is that you're baking out of it. This is one of the recipes where you wouldn't use parchment paper. I feel like the paper would soften the crispiness that you tend to look forward to in, oh, it's boiling, that you look forward to in a baklava. So I'm gonna stir this. I'm gonna set my timer for 5 minutes. I think I'm supposed to be stirring it the whole time. Let's just go back to our recipe. Normally, simmer, boil for 5 minutes and cook another 5 minutes. Wow. So that's going to reduce quite a bit. I have done a similar recipe before where I didn't even bother making this simple syrup. As soon as I see recipes that require you to do a simple syrup as well as the regular baking that you're doing, I kind of get turned off. So my quick way to do it would be to use honey. I've done honey, cornstarch, a bit of juice, something that makes it watery but still sticky and sweet. And then I do my layers. And so the piece that takes a long time that most people don't enjoy is pulling apart the phyllo, and you're gonna see when we start to work with it, opening out, brush the layer, add your things, brush the layer, add your things. So it's this whole process. I forgot that this piece though, the good part is you pour it on at the end. So I can actually get started on the layers. The syrup comes at the very end. Oh wow, because you have to let it cool completely. I don't understand why that is, but we're gonna preheat the oven. Preheat the oven to 325. Bake 325. I have it in a middle rack. This is what it looks like when you open the phyllo. The other one I like to work with sometimes is puff pastry. Very similar packaging. I'm just gonna get that away. You can buy these, and whenever they're on sale, I kind of fill my freezer with them because I do savory dishes with them. I do vegetarian strudels. So let's take this out. It's gonna be hard for me to show you, but here are all the layers. It looks like paper thin paper. And I'm going to, and I actually don't put butter between every single layer. That would take a lot of butter. So I'm gonna kind of cheat this first one. And I've got my butter. Brush, brush, brush. And actually, maybe I'll do this. I'm gonna add a little fold in there so it's exactly the width of this. Then sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle. This is our fancy cinnamon sugar. And then fold over another layer. And brush, brush. So I'm not gonna do, actually maybe I'll just cheat. I'm gonna do this. I don't wanna take so much time. Now, in the other pan is skinnier, so I could take scissors and actually cut this in half. And then it's not as big a deal. Let me make sure this isn't sticking. Wow, I can't say that I've ever followed this correctly. I'm usually kind of a fly by the seat of your pants baker. I am gonna cut this in half so that it's not so tedious. And here's an example. Let's see if it's the width of here. Oh, no, not quite. So that's fine. I'm gonna do it in my own way. Put another layer. This one is kind of odd. It's not a traditional size lasagna pan. Sometimes I do it in metal. Sometimes I do it in glass. I thought you would like to look at the process, so that's why I'm doing it in glass. You can see what I'm doing. Butter, sugar, pastry, butter, sugar, pastry, butter, sugar, pastry. So you're gonna find kind of a rhythm. Let me fold it on this side. And I'm kind of cheating, it's not pretty. Once it's all attached together and baked, it doesn't really matter how you did it. It's just flaky layers of goodness. And this is one of my favorite desserts when I go to any restaurant, Greek or Lebanese. And I often find myself a little mad if it's not very good. It's not always the cheapest thing, but now that you've seen how much work goes into making it, you can understand why. So I'm gonna add another layer, and I'm just kind of folding it loosely. And I did wash my hands. Add some more butter. So the secret of this whole dessert is butter, sugar, butter, sugar, butter, sugar. And I'm gonna do that on the, once I've hit the edge on this, I'll do the same thing on my other one. Lie it down, fold it in. Maybe I'll add one more. I have a lot of this. What I can do if I had time is with the leftover, often previous roommates and I, we would make lentil with mushroom and a vegetarian gravy strudels. We would make an apple pear strudel. You can do all kinds of things with this leftover pastry, which is going to be left over this time. So I probably will be doing that. See, I'm using way more sugar and cinnamon than it called for. Now, that means this is done. Then I have to put it on low. And it's supposed to keep reducing. So it's saying, add the honey. Oh, poop, I did it kind of backwards. I did it backwards. So I added the lemon juice / pineapple juice before it asked for it. We'll see. I've done it this way before. You find the more that you bake, the more that you can kind of mess around with what the rules are and see what works and what doesn't. The only thing I find in baking that you really 100% have to follow the rules is with the ingredient that causes the rising. So whether it's how many eggs it calls for, and especially how much baking soda or baking powder it calls for. When you don't put enough or too much, it changes the flavor, the consistency, and how much it's gonna rise. That's the only time I 100% have to follow the rules. And I'm gonna keep folding and adding. This is gonna be a very nice, because what happens is this is gonna rise up. Maybe I will use a whole package for each one. I don't know how generous I feel like being. I'm kind of sad because normally when I do all this baking, I am gonna have people over, and that's been the hardest part of this isolation, is the no people over, no parties, no impromptu dinner parties. Our home is constantly a revolving door of people visiting, and I love it that way. And so this has been really, really difficult for all of us in our family to not be able to impromptu have people over, to have to follow all these rules. I know it's for safety, so that's why I do it. And that's why I'm a little lectury in my social media presence, as well as with my friends. It has surprised me how many people are not taking it seriously and still visiting their external family. And they think, well, it's still family. I went, no, they're still outside people. And every human you come in contact with represents all the people they've come in contact with. So that's why I'm a little judgy about it. I'm gonna fold that under. Oh, it's almost like putting the edge on your pants. Oh, okay, so I'm gonna put one last layer of butter, because then I'm gonna do the other side. The other one, actually, I have another tiny little piece. Let's use it up. And I think I'm gonna have to make more cinnamon sugar. Let's see, let's do this. Tuck that under. Oh, that is beautiful. I'm gonna show you in a second what I've done. The last piece of butter that's kind of spread over it, awesome. And I forgot that this is all going to rise. So this is what it looks like. Nothing super exciting, but I've done many layers. It's almost like the French millefeuille, multiple sheets. So sprinkle, 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 5 sheets. Blah, 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 push down, they all stick together, using a knife, cut into diamonds before you even cook it. And then when you cook it, what's gonna happen is you're gonna pour the syrup on after. So it's a little different than, oh here, so I'm gonna do, now my squares that are cut are gonna fit perfectly. Let's do this. So you're very patient watching all these boring sheets of butter, sugar, sheets. It's a lot of the same repetition. So mine is gonna be very cinnamony. There's that. I sometimes like it lazy and I just speed it up. So I'm gonna do that, butter, it could take a long time. If I'm doing a savory use of this, so for say I'm making spanakopita or some of the other uses of phyllo, I will actually mix a little bit of a healthy oil. Usually it's grapeseed oil. My holistic nutritionist cousin says that if I'm going to use an oil, that is actually one of the healthiest, least inflaming oils. So I will often mix that with the butter so that you're not using so much butter. I call it healthier, but it's actually cheaper. Especially I'm noticing during this isolation, there's almost no butter on sale anywhere. The other day it was on sale at Superstore, but I did not want to risk the chaos of going into such a big place during this time if I didn't have to. Oh, see, I'm running out of, used way more butter than it called for, but that's because I'm making 2. Oh, gotta make some more of the sugar because we're going through a lot of it. And again, I love to buy as much as, oh, I don't need that much. I love to buy as much organic as I can. I figure it's the one time I have control over it. So, oh, is that my 5 minutes? So when I'm cooking, if I can use organic, then it kind of cuts down, especially if we eat out. There's no control over the organic there. I'm gonna just use my hand. Again, making more of this cinnamon sugar. Oh, that's a lot. Next layer. So yeah, this is a much quicker, this one, the square one, isn't got as much flavor probably as the oblong or the rectangle one will have had a lot of butter. So I won't be able to show you the whole process. When I post it online, I will show you, I'll actually show a Google image of what it looks like with the syrup poured on it. I definitely wouldn't want to hold your attention that long here, but back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So, oh, I actually have to cook more butter. So this process, it will cook for, I don't know, 30 minutes. Oh my. You would pre-cut the triangles. You pour this, you cook it for 30 minutes at, what did I say it was? 325. Then you will pour the syrup on, turn the temperature way down to, oh, only 300 and cook a little longer. This says up to 30 minutes. I think that's too much with the syrup on it. So it rises before the syrup's on it. Then you pour the syrup, it soaks in. That's what makes the baklava wet and sticky. That's what gives it amazing texture. And then when you put it back in the oven, it continues caramelizing that syrup that you've made. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to any feedback of other things you would like to bake. Have a good afternoon.